Welcome, everyone. It's February 10th. Mercury is still retrograde. It will be retrograde until I think the 20th or the 21st. And believe me, with all the things that have been going on today, I totally see this. In fact, it's funny, somebody was supposed to send me a galley and they ended up, and they said, oh, it's not going to come because we're working on changes and stuff like that. And I said, it arrived yesterday. So it's been one of those kinds of days. So welcome to February Bookaccino. We are so happy to have you here again. We've got a great lineup today. Once again, those people who are live today, remember that you will be able to, at the end of the event, that we will be putting up a SurveyMonkey link that will have you able to enter by a contest to win one of 3 books by telling us which of these books that were mentioned today were your favorites. And it's fun for us because we like to see what you're coming back and saying was interesting to you during the presentation. And sometimes you really surprise us, and that's like fun too. So Austin will be putting up that link as time goes on. Also, in the Q&A, if you want to tell us what you're reading, if you want to share what you're reading, we love seeing that. I get the reports later on and I sit and read it. And if we have questions, we are going to go to questions at the end. So with no further ado, let us begin with your top picks from last month. Okay, so these are the books that you registered, and they were all super close, of what you're most interested in reading. It's Kristen Hanna's The Four Winds, Melody Benjamin's The Children's Blizzard, The Paris Library by Janet Skeslin Charles, Lisa Scottolini's Internal, and The Last Garden in England by Julia Kelly. And it's we love this. And you know what's really interesting is these books were right from the start. When we started seeing responses, these were the top 5 and they didn't change. So I think we can see it really, really resonated with people right away. So no further ado, let's go to February. We're going to start with historical fiction because there's a lot of historical fiction this month. First up, we've got The Girl from the Channel Islands, which is by Jenny LaCote. It's summer 1940. Hetty Berkoo has fled Vienna 2 years ago. Now she watches the skies over Jersey for German planes, convinced that an invasion is imminent. When it finally comes, there's no counterattack from the Allied forces. The Channel Islands are simply not worth defending. Most islanders and occupying forces settle into an easy coexistence. But for Hetty, the situation is perilously different, for she's Jewish, a fact that can mean deportation and worse. Hetty hides in plain sight, working as a translator for the Germans while silently working against them. She forges a tentative friendship with a sympathetic German officer who is likewise trapped by circumstance. And as war intensifies, Hetty knows she's in greater danger every day. Soon her survival will depend not just on her own courage, but on the community she has come to cherish and a man who should be her enemy. This is one of our winter reading 24-hour contests. So those of you who entered already will be picking winners shortly. Next, we've got Mask of Honor by Sharon Virts. This is a coming-of-age tale set in the early 19th century, where 2 sons of a Virginia aristocracy risk it all to defend their dreams and determine their own destinies. General Armistead Mason and John Jack Mason McCarty are brothers-in-law, second cousins, and descendants of the founding father, George Mason IV. Ambitious and headstrong, together they set out to find love, acceptance, and honor on their own merit. Armistead, by nature a politician, demands respect and strives for perfection. Jack, by inclination a rover, looks to forge his own path. When Armistead is challenged by corruption in the political machine and is denied a seat in the U.S. Congress, the two become embroiled in a bitter dispute that sets in motion an irrevocable chain of events, leading them to dueling grounds and an outcome that changes everything. It's based on real historical accounts of the 1819 Mason-McCarty duel, and it's a story of courage, conviction, and the cost of sacrificing one life to forge another. It's also a tale that Sharon wrote because of the home that she bought and restored, which is called Selma. And I encourage you to take a listen to the interview that we did with her Bookreporter Talks To, where she talks about buying this home, well, actually buying this wreck of a home, restoring it to its former glory, and discovering the history of the house, which inspired her to write this book. She had been a corporate executive. She'd sold a company where when she sold it, she had 5,000 employees, had not really thought about being a writer. In fact, if anything, she was an artist. That was, she paints with a knife. It's just some beautiful work. So she actually describes where the heart of the story came from and what she was interested in and what drew her to continue to write historical fiction going forward as well. It's a Book Reporter Bets On selection. There's a contest to enter to win this book right now. It's up for the next 24 hours. So after this event, if you're interested, you may want to click over to Book Reporter and enter to win. Next, we've got The Paris Library by Janet Skesling Charles. I had so much fun talking to her this week. Our interview with her just went up. This book was supposed to come out last June, which was actually the 100th anniversary of the Paris Library, or the American Library in Paris, that this book is based on. So we've got, I'm going to reiterate what it was, even though you picked it as a favorite last month, because it's one I really don't want you to miss. It was interesting. Last year, I was met her at Winter Institute, and I'd read 50 pages of the book because we were going to have dinner. And I don't like to finish right to the end until closer to pub date. So I'd read the 50 pages. And then last week when I was going to interview her, I realized I'd never finished the book. So I crash read, the last 250 pages, and it's just so completely well done. Starts out in Paris in 1939. Young and ambitious Odile Souchet has it all. Her handsome police officer beau and a dream job at the American Library in Paris. When the Nazis march into Paris, Odile stands to lose everything she holds dear, including her beloved library. Together with her fellow librarians, she joins the resistance with her best weapons she has, books. And when the war finally ends, instead of freedom, she tastes the bitter sting of unspeakable betrayal. So let's flash to Montana in 1983. Lily's a lonely teenager looking for adventure in small town Montana. Let's face it, Lily wants out of Montana. Her interest is piqued by her solitary elderly neighbor, and as Lily uncovers more about her neighbor's mysterious past, she finds they share a love of language, the same longings, and the same intense jealousy, never suspecting that a dark secret from the past connects them. Now, I have to share that Janet grew up in Montana. She was the girl who wanted out. There was a neighbor there who was a war bride who spoke French and told her all about France, which infused her wanting to go there, live there, study the culture more. She now lives in Paris and usually summers in Montana. And she's got great stories because there is actually a woman named Odile Souchet. It's not the character in this book, but she used the person's name because it means so much to her. Really enjoyed interviewing her, and I hope you check it out. Next, we've got Zory by Laird Hunt. As a girl, Zory Underwood's modest and hard-scrapple home county was the only constant in her young life. After losing both of her parents, Zory moved in with her aunt, whose own death orphaned Zory all over again, casting her off into rural Depression-era Indiana. Drifting west, she survived on odd jobs, sleeping in barns and under the stars, before finding a position at a radium processing plant. At the end of the day, the girls in her factory glowed from radioactive material. And those of you who read Radium Girls years ago will remember very much what this was like for these poor girls that really didn't know what they were doing to their bodies at the time. But when Indiana called Zory home, she finally found the love and community that have eluded her in and around the small town of Hillsburg. And yet, even as she tries to build a new life, Zory discovers that her trials have only just begun. Spanning an entire lifetime, a life convulsed and transformed by the events of the 20th century, Laird Hunt's extraordinary novel offers a profound and intimate portrait of dreams that propel one tenacious woman onward and the losses that she cannot outrun. So I've been hearing a lot of great things about Zory. I absolutely love this cover. Next, we've got The Kitchen Front by Jennifer Ryan. Many of you enjoyed the Chilbury Ladies Choir, and she's the author of that book. And here with an unforgettable tale of a BBC-sponsored wartime cooking competition and the 4 women who enter to better their lives. 2 years into World War II, Britain is feeling her losses. The Nazis have won battles, the Blitz has destroyed cities, and U-boats have cut off the supply of food. In an effort to help housewives with food rationing, a BBC radio program called The Kitchen Front is holding a cooking contest, and the grand prize is a job as the program's first ever female co-host. For 4 different women, winning the competition would present a crucial chance to change their lives. These 4 women are giving the competition their all, even if that sometimes means bending the rules. With so much at stake, will the contest that aims to bring the community together only serve to drive it apart? Um, when I was reading this book, I was thinking the beginning days of the pandemic when no one could get yeast, but everyone wanted to cook bread. So I could just try and figure out what they're trying to do with limited ingredients, limited budget, and limited time. This book is going to be one of our spring preview titles where we will be giving away a copy of the book within 24 hours. Next, we've got Band of Sisters by Lauren Willig. This is coming out on March 2nd. In it, a scholarship girl from Brooklyn, Kate Moran, thought she had found a place among Smith's Mayflower descendants, only to have her illusions dashed that summer after graduation, when charismatic alumni Betsy Rutherford delivers a rounding speech at the Smith College Club in April of 1917, looking for volunteers to help French citizens decimated by the German war machine. Kate is too busy earning her living to even think of taking up the call. But when her former best friend, Emmeline Van Alden, reaches out and begs her to take the place of a girl who dropped out, Kate reluctantly agrees to join the new Smith College Relief Unit. 4 months later, Kate and 17 other Smithies, including 2 trailblazing female doctors, set sail for France. The volunteers are armed with money, supplies, and good intentions, all of which immediately go astray. As they cope with the hardships and terrors of war, Kate and her colleagues find themselves navigating old rivalries and new betrayals that threaten the very existence of the unit. This book is one that, we know that Lauren does such a great job with historical fiction. I am going to be moderating a panel with her and 3 other historical fiction authors for William Morrow for March 1st, right before the book comes out. We'll have a link in the newsletter. I think we've had it in the last couple of weeks if you want to join us for that event. Next, we've got The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. This is a book that we heard about a lot when we were doing preview events. And first of all, I absolutely love the cover. I think it's absolutely stunning. It's coming out on March 2nd. And for those of you who are always looking for a little bit something different in your reading, this one's got some magical realism. It's a forgotten history, a secret network of women, a legacy of poisons and revenge. Welcome to The Lost Apothecary. Hidden in the depths of 18th century London, a secret apothecary shop caters to an unusual kind of clientele. Women across the city whisper of a mysterious figure named Nella, who sells well-disguised poisons to use against the oppressive men in their lives. But the apothecary's fate is jeopardized when her newest patron, a precocious 12-year-old, makes a fatal mistake, sparking a string of consequences that echo through the centuries. Meanwhile, in present-day London, aspiring historian Caroline Parswell spends her 10th anniversary alone, running from her own demons. When she stumbles upon a clue to the unsolved apothecary murders that haunted London 200 years ago, her life collides with the apothecaries in a stunning twist of fate, and not everyone will survive. This book's getting tremendous buzz, so encourage you to take a look at it. Next, we've got Rhapsody by Mitchell James Kaplan, also coming on March 2nd. Now, I'm going to just share something, a little side here. On February 2nd, we had more books come out on that date than there are days in the month. And March 2nd looks like it's exactly the same thing. There are usually a lot of books that drop the first Tuesday of the month. You all know that books usually come out on Tuesdays. And it's absolutely crazy sometimes when we sit and look and it's like, is everything coming out on March 2nd? Just let me know now. And there are a lot. So one evening in 1924, Catherine K. Swift, One evening in 1924, Catherine K. Swift, the restless but loyal society wife of a wealthy banker, James Warbug, and a serious pianist who longs for recognition, attends a concert. The piece, Rhapsody in Blue. The composer, a brilliant, elusive young musical genius named George Gershwin. Kay is transfixed, helpless to resist the magnetic pull of George's talent, charm, and swagger. Their 10-year love affair, complicated by her conflicted loyalty to her husband and the twists and turns of her own musical career, ends only with George's death from a brain tumor at the age of 38. Set in jazz-age New York City, the stunning work of fiction for fans of Paris Wife and Loving Frank explores the timeless bond between two brilliant, strong-willed artists. George Gershwin left behind not just a body of work unmatched in popular history, but a woman who loved him with all her heart, knowing all the while that it belonged not to her, but to the world. And I have to say, I did not realize that he died at 38. News. Next, we're going to go to some fiction. We start out with Susan Mallory's The Vineyard, A Painted Moon, and that's out just this week. Mackenzie Dien seems to have it all: a beautiful home, close friends, and a successful career as an elite winemaker with the family winery. But there's just one problem. It's not her family, it's her husband's. In fact, everything in her life is tied to him. His mother is the closest thing to a mom she's ever had. Their home is on the family compound. His sister is her best friend. So when she and her husband admit their marriage is over, her pain goes beyond heartbreak. She's on the brink of losing everything: her job, her home, her friends, and worst of all, her family. Staying is an option. She continued to work at the winery, be friends with her mother-in-law, hug her nieces and nephews, but as an employee, nothing more. Or she can surrender every piece of her heart in order to build a legacy of her own. If she can dare to let go of the life she thought she wanted, she might discover something even more beautiful waiting for her beneath a painted moon. And this too was one of our winter reading selections. Next, we've got Dark Horses by Susan Dark Horses by Susan Mihalik. Susan Mihalik. Oh my gosh, should be easier than that. Dark Horses is a darkly gripping novel about a teenage girl's fierce struggle to reclaim her life from her abusive father. 15-year-old equestrian protege Rowan Montgomery has only known two worlds: inside the riding arena and outside of it. Both, for as long as she can remember, have been ruled by her father, who demands strict obedience in all areas of her life. The warped power dynamic of coach and rider extends far beyond the stables, and Roan's relationship with her father has long been inappropriate. She's been able to compartmentalize that dark aspect of her life, ruthlessly focusing on her ambitions as a rider heading for the Olympics, just as her father had done. However, her developing relationship with Will Howard, a boy her own age, broadens the scope of her vision, and she realizes that, well, maybe life is not really supposed to be the way she's been living it. It's out on February 16th. It's a winter reading selection. There'll be a 24-hour contest with it. Next, we got Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. It's coming on March 2nd. I actually heard Patricia talk about this book, and it has just intrigued me to want to read it more. And there's something about this book that I absolutely love. It is a slim novel. At a time where a lot of work, I feel, is bloated and big and could use a sharper edit, it's a really, really tightly done book. I think the same thing that I said last month when I was talking about Yellow Wife. It's another thing that is really, really tightly put together, and there's not a spare word in the prose, and I do love that. In it, Talia is being held at a correctional facility for adolescent girls in the forested mountains of Colombia after committing an impulsive crime of violence that may or may not have been warranted. She urgently needs to get out and get back home to Bogota, where her father and a plane ticket to the United States are waiting for her. If she misses her flight, she might also miss her chance to finally be reunited with her family in the North. How this family came to occupy two different countries, two different worlds, comes into focus like twists of a kaleidoscope. Patricia, herself a dual citizen and the daughter of Colombian immigrants, gives voice to all five family members as they navigate the particulars of their respective circumstances. Will Talia make it to Bogota in time? And if so, if she does, can she bring herself to trade the solid facts of her father and life in Colombia for the distant vision of her mother and siblings in America? So there's Infinite Country. And I think this is just a stunning cover. Next, we've got Nadia Hashimi's Sparks Like Stars, which is also coming out on March 2nd. I absolutely loved her previous works, which are A Pearl That Broke Its Shell, The House Without Windows, and When the Moon is Low. Also, she is a doctor and she has 4 children. And it always marvel when I talk to Nadia about how much she gets done in her life, given all that she has going on. Here in Kabul, it's 1978, and Tara Zamani is living a privileged life in Afghanistan's thriving cosmopolitan capital. The 70s are a time of remarkable promise under the leadership of people like Sardar Duard, Afghanistan's progressive president, and to Tara's beloved father, his right-hand man. But the 10-year-old's world is shattered when communists stage a coup, assassinating the president and her entire family. Only she survives. She's smuggled out of the palace by a guard named Cher, who who helps her find her way to the home of a female American diplomat who adopts her and raises her in America. In her new country, she takes on a new name, Ariana Shepard, and throws herself into her studies, eventually becoming a renowned surgeon. 40 years after that fateful night in Kabul, her world is rocked again when an elderly patient appears in the exam room, a man she never expected to see again. It's Cher, the soldier who saved her life, yet may have murdered her entire family. Realizing that she cannot go on without finding the truth, she embarks on a quest that takes her back to Kabul. So I know that in Nadia's hands, we're going to get a great story, but we're also going to get really rich history because she knows both worlds that she's writing about. Next, we're going to do thrillers and mysteries. We know that many of you are thriller and mystery fans. First up is Never Far Away by Michael Cordia. This is on sale this week. In it, Nina Morgan's bloodstained car was found a decade ago on a lonely Florida road. Forensic evidence suggested that she'd been murdered, although her body was never found. Her disappearance left her infant children to the care of their father. Once a pilot, mother, wife, and witness to a gruesome crime, Nina had to flee her own life to save her family. She reinvented herself as Lee Trenton, a guide in the Allagash wilderness in northern Maine. She never expected to see her children again, but now tragedy has returned them to her, only they have no idea that she's their mother, and delivered all of them back into danger. Aunt Lee will need some help, and an old ally has a suggestion, an enigmatic young hitman named Dax Blackwell. Never Far Away is a collision between old and new dreams, where wills and ingenuity of a broken family will be tested against all odds. It's another beautiful cover. Next, we've got The Power Couple by Alex Berenson. This is on sale this week. I interviewed Alex yesterday, and we will have that up next week. It's also a Book Reporter Bets on selection, and he's part of the Valentine's Day contest, which if you haven't entered, you have till Friday to do that. So if you want to win a copy, that's the time to go do this. In this, Rebecca and Brian Unsworth appear to have it all. Nice house in the suburbs of Washington, 2 well-behaved, healthy teenage children, important government jobs, Rebecca working in counterterrorism for the FBI, Brian serving as a coder for the NSA. Their lives stand to improve even more as Brian in his off hours has developed and sold a highly profitable app. However, the Unsworth marriage is not as perfect as it seems. After 2 decades of living together, they've drifted apart. Seeking to revive their strained relationship, they decide for their 20th wedding anniversary to take their kids, Kira and Tony, on a European getaway. They have a blast until one night in Barcelona when Kira doesn't come back home from a dance club. She's gone, and then they learn she's abducted. And over the course of a single weekend, the Unsworth will do everything possible to find her. Even as Brian and Rebecca come together for Kira, they realize their marriage is more tenuous than they ever realized. This is a marriage of 2 stories, the story of a marriage and also of an espionage case. And the way the 2 come together and the way that Alex does his storytelling is so interesting. The beginning part of the book, we only are seeing things from Rebecca's point of view. And then we hear from Rebecca and Kara's point of view. So we're inside both of their heads. And yes, we're hearing from Brian, but we're hearing from Brian only through their lens. And then somewhere around page 209 in the galley I was reading, I don't know where it's going to be in the final copy, all of a sudden we start hearing from Brian. And the whole story takes on a completely different turn because you're hearing what he's feeling in the marriage and what he's feeling in the relationship. And as anyone who's been a long time married knows, There's two sides to every story. Well, there's also a real lot going on here, because remember, these two are both working in intelligence organizations. Each one knows some different things. They can't share them with one another. So what's happening on the back end here? And really, what happened with Kira and why was she abducted? So really strong book. Also, look at the cover. It's actually a woman's face. When you flip it over, it's a man's. I confess that I didn't get that until a couple of days ago when I had the book facing the other way. Clever cover, folks. Next, we've got All Girls by Emily Layden. This is on sale on February 16th, which is Tuesday next week. It's a keenly perceptive coming-of-age novel for fans of Sally Rooney, Curtis Sittenfeld, and J. Courtney Sullivan. Follows 9 women as they navigate their ambitions and fears at a prestigious New England prep school, all pitched against the backdrop of a scandal the administration wants silenced. But as the months unfold and the school's efforts to control the ensuing crisis fall short, these extraordinary girls are forced to discover their voices and their powers. You love to grow to love a place, and then you grow up. And I just love this cover with like the ripped plaid. It says something right there. Next, we've got Mark Greaney's Relentless. And I include this because my husband is a huge Gray Man novel fan. I mean, when these books come to the house, I don't see them ever because he just takes off and reads them. And the Gray Man is being made into a television series. I cannot remember who is making it. It was stopped production because of COVID, but everyone is super excited about this. It's on sale on February 16th. The first agent's disappearance was a puzzle. The second was a mystery. The third was a conspiracy. Intelligence operatives around the world are disappearing. When a missing American agent reappears in Venezuela, Court Gentry, the Gray Man, is dispatched to bring him in, but a team of assassins has other ideas. Court escapes with his life and a vital piece of intelligence. Meanwhile, CIA agent Zoya Zakharova is in Berlin. Her mission to infiltrate a private intelligence firm with some alarming connections. The closer she gets to answers, the less likely she is to get out alive. Court and Zoya are just 2 pieces on this international chessboard, and they're about to discover one undeniable truth. Sometimes capturing a king requires sacrificing some of the pawns. So there you go, Mark Greaney, Relentless. Next, we've got We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker, which will be out on March 2nd. I had the pleasure of interviewing Chris back in the fall for a preview event for booksellers, and he was just so much fun to talk to. I was just talking to his publisher this morning about booking him for an event because he is just so much fun, and I want to interview him again. And when you hear it, you'll know why. Well, let's talk about this book. There's 2 kinds of families, the one you're born into and the ones we create. Walk has never left the coastal California town where he grew up. He may have become the chief of police, but he's still trying to heal the old wounds that have given the testimony that sent his best friend, Vincent King, to prison decades before. Now it's 30 years later, and Vincent is being released. A 40-something-year-old sheriff and a 13-year-old girl may not seem to have a lot in common, but they both have come to expect that people will disappoint you, your loved ones will leave you, and if you open your heart, it will be broken. So when trouble arrives with Vincent King, Walk and Duchess find that they will be unable to do anything but usher it in, arms wide closed. We Begin at the End is a novel about people who deserve so much more than life serves them. At times it's devastating, with flashes of humor and hope throughout. It's ultimately an inspiring tale of how the human spirit prevails and how in the end, love in all its different guises wins. So We Begin at the End. I had a reader who read an advanced copy of this the other day write me and said that she was weeping at the last chapter. I confess that, remember my adage of like, I only read the beginning of parts if I don't know the book is out yet. I've read the first 50 pages to 100 and I wasn't weeping, but the story is so well developed. It's one of those ones I cannot wait to finish. Next, we've got Who is Maud Dixon by Alexandra Andrews, also coming on March 2nd. Florence Darrow is a low-level publishing employee who believes she's destined to be a famous writer. When she stumbles into a job as the assistant to the brilliant, enigmatic novelist known as Maud Dixon, whose true identity is a secret, it appears that the universe is finally providing Florence's big chance. The arrangement seems perfect. Maud Dixon, whose real name Florence discovered is Helen Wilcox, can be prickly, but she's full of pointed wisdom, not only in how to write, but also how to live. Florence quickly falls under Helen's spell and eagerly accompanies her to Morocco, where Helen's new novel is set. Amidst the colorful streets of Marrakesh and the windswept beaches of the coast, Florence's life at last feels interesting enough to inspire a novel of her own. But when Florence wakes up in the hospital after a terrible car accident with no memory of the previous night and no sign of Helen, she's tempted to take a shortcut. Instead of hiding in Helen's shadow, why not upgrade into her life? Not to mention her best-selling pseudonym. Who is Maud Dixon is a stylishly psychological thriller about how far into the darkness you're willing to go to claim the life you always wanted. Next, we've got some memoirs, biographies, and nonfiction. We're going to open with The Babysitter. And those who know me well actually, it's called The Babysitter, My Summers Spent with a Serial Killer. Anybody who knows me well knows I love true crime. And this book by Liza Rodman and Jennifer Jordan definitely fits the bill here. So let's see what the story's about. Growing up on Cape Cod in the 1960s, Liza Rodman was a lonely girl. During the summers, while her mom worked days at the local motel and danced most nights in the Provincetown bars, her babysitter, the kind, handsome handyman at the motel where her mom worked, took her and her sisters on adventures in his truck. He bought them popsicles, and together they visited his secret garden in the Truro woods. To Liza, he was one of the few kind and understanding adults in her life. Everyone thought he was just a great guy. There was one thing she didn't know. Their babysitter was a serial killer. Some of his victims were buried in pieces right there in his garden in the woods. Though Tony Costa's gruesome case made screaming headlines in 1969 and beyond, Liza never made the connection between her friendly babysitter and the infamous killer of numerous women, including 4 in Massachusetts until decades later. Haunted by nightmares and horrified by what she learned, Liza became obsessed with the case. And now she and co-writer Jennifer Jordan reveal the chilling and unforgettable story of a charming but brutal psychopath through the eyes of a young girl who once called him her friend. So I think that's a really crazy story, but I look forward to reading it, and I can just see the made-for-television show now. Next, we've got Come Fly With Me, the jet age story of the women of Pan Am by Julia Clark. And I'm including this because those years of flying, the early years of air travel were just so different from where they are now, where we get packed in like cattle. There it was like dining, a fabulous experience. Everybody dressed well. Those were the glory days. It was also the days when we left the house and got on airplanes. And let's just take a look at that. Maybe that's the reason this book is feeling close to my heart right now. So let's talk about what these women were like. They're required to have a college education, speak 2 languages, and possess the political savvy of a foreign service officer. A jet age stewardess serving on the iconic Pan Am between 1966 and 1975 had to be between 5'3" and 5'9", between 105 and 140 pounds, and under 26 years of age at the time of hire. Julia Cook's intimate storytelling weaves together the real-life stories of a memorable cast of characters, from small-town Lynn Totten, a science major who decided life in a lab was not for her, to Hazel Bowie, one of the relatively few Black stewardesses of the era, as they embrace the liberation of their new jet-set life. Cook brings light to the story of Pan Am stewardesses' roles in the Vietnam War, as the airline aided runs from Saigon to Hong Kong for plane loads of weary young soldiers straight from the battlefields who were off for 5 days in R&R and then flown back to the war. Finally, with Operation Baby Lift, the dramatic evacuation of 2,000 children during the fall of Saigon, the book's special cast of stewardesses unites to play an extraordinary role on the world stage. So you've got Come Fly With Me. Besides the fact that I long to get on an airplane right now, I have a friend who was one of those, she's actually a literary agent, who was one of those flight attendants. And I love hearing her tell stories of what it was like during those years. Next, we've got Isabel Allende's The Soul of a Woman, which is coming on March 2nd. Anybody who's read Isabel Allende will be looking for a nonfiction book from her. I love this opening line where she says, when I say I was a feminist in kindergarten, I am not exaggerating, begins Isabel Allende. As a child, she watched her mother, abandoned by her husband, provide for 3 small children without resources or voice. Isabel became a fierce and defiant little girl, determined to fight for the life her mother couldn't have. As a young woman coming of age in the late 60s, she rode the second wave of feminism. Among a tribe of like-minded female journalists, Allende for the first time felt comfortable in her own skin as they wrote with a knife between our teeth about women's issues. She has seen what the movement has accomplished over the course of her lifetime, and over the course of 3 passionate marriages, she has learned how to grow as a woman while having a partner, when to step away, and the rewards of embracing one's sexuality. This book, Allende hopes, will light the torches of our daughters and granddaughters with mine. They will have to live with us as we live for our mothers and carry on with the work still left to be finished. So Isabel Allende, we know, has written well about love. She is very, very vocal about how she feels about love and passionate marriage and passionate relationships. So you just know here, this is going to be a very, very full-bodied work. Next, we've got Women in White Coats by Olivia Campbell. This is for fans of Hidden Figures and Radium Girls. Comes a remarkable story of 3 Victorian women who broke down barriers in the medical field to become the first women doctors, revolutionizing the way women receive healthcare. In the early 1800s, women were dying in large numbers from treatable diseases because they avoided receiving medical care. Examinations performed by male doctors were often demeaning and even painful. In addition, women faced stigma from illness. A diagnosis could greatly limit their ability to find husbands, jobs, or be received in polite society. Motivated by personal loss and frustration over inadequate medical care, Elizabeth Blackwell, Elizabeth Garrett Anderson, and Sophia Jex Black fought for a woman's place in the male-dominated medical field. Women in White Coats tells the complete history of these 3 pioneering women who, despite countless obstacles, earned medical degrees and paved the way for other women to do the same. Though very different in personality and circumstance, together these women built women-run hospitals and teaching colleges, creating for the first time medical care for women by women. And as we are approaching, Women's History Month, it's a perfect book to sit and read because there, I know a number of women doctors. There's a number of women doctors are friends, and I just, there's so many times where we don't reflect on how difficult it would have been years ago to get jobs like this. Remember, the people were either going to be nurses or they were going to be teachers, and now all of a sudden they're saying there were a number of women that were fighting to become doctors as early as the early 1800s. Next, we've got some April titles to look forward to. We always try to give you 2 months ahead. Our story is that we're doing 4 weeks in advance because we can barely decide what we're eating for dinner tonight, let alone what's happening over the next 4 weeks. So we give you 4 weeks of books, and then we tease a couple that are coming in a couple of months. So here's some April titles. We're opening with the Girls in the Stilt House, which is coming on April 6th from Source Books. Set in the 1920s Mississippi, this debut Southern novel weaves a beautiful and harrowing story of 2 teenage girls cast in an unlikely partnership through murder. Ada promises herself that she would never go back to the trace, to her hard life on the swamp and her harsh father. But now, after running away to Baton Rouge and briefly knowing a different kind of life, she finds herself with nowhere to go but back home. She knows there will be a price to pay with her father. Matilda, daughter of a sharecropper, is from the other side of Trace, doing what she can to protect her family from the whims and demands of some particularly callous locals is an ongoing struggle. She forms a plan to go north, to pack up the secrets she's holding about her life in the South and hang them on the line for all to see in Ohio. As the 2 girls are drawn deeper and deeper into a dangerous world of bootleggers and moral corruption, they must come to terms with the complexities of their tenuous bond and hidden past that links them in ways that could cost them their lives. And people are saying that there are echoes here of Delia Owens, and the writing is that same kind of thing about crawdads. It's that same kind of murky, on the water kind of a feeling. So just another book to have on your radar for April 6th. Also coming on April 6th is I Have Been Buried Under Years of Dust by Valerie Gilpere and Emily Groden. It's an amazing story. It's a remarkable memoir by a mother and her autistic daughter who'd long been unable to communicate until a miraculous breakthrough revealed a young woman with a rich and creative interior life, a poet who'd been trapped inside for more than 2 decades. I have been buried under years of dust, and now I have much to say. Those were the first words 25-year-old Emily Groden ever wrote. Born with nonverbal autism, Emily's only means of communicating for a quarter of a century had been one-word responses or physical gestures. That Emily was intelligent was never in question. From an early age, she'd shown clear signs that she understood what was going on, though she could not express herself. Her parents, Valerie and Tom, sought every therapy possible in the hope that Emily would one day be able to reveal herself. When this miraculous breakthrough occurred, Emily was finally able to give herself insight into the life, frustration, and joys of a person with autism. And I have the pleasure of Zooming with both Valerie and her mom. We're actually working on building a website for them. And how this book came to my attention, I am so glad it did, because her story is so amazing. When I started reading this book, she actually remembers incidents from when she was a child and describes them in detail as she's writing. And there are these things where she'd attend a party or she'd go someplace and she can remember every single detail of what's going on, but had never been able to communicate with her parents about what she was feeling inside. She talks about how when they come in a room, she can recognize their smells, their feelings, the attention that they're giving her. And I just think it's amazing. It's like one of those Helen Keller stories that there's somebody really, really brilliant trapped inside, and they have no way to be able to tell their own story. Emily's got a active page, author page on Facebook, and she's on Instagram. And it's wonderful to read her poetry, to read her writing, and see what's going on in somebody who really has so much to share and so much to say. So I've been buried under years of dust. You can just imagine, as a parent, I can't even imagine what that experience was like for her mom. Next, we've got Mother May I by Jocelyn Jackson, which is coming also on April 6th. April 6th is the first Tuesday of the month, in case you can't figure it out. Growing up in poor rural Georgia, Bree Cabot was warned by her single mother that the world was a dark and scary place. She rejected her mother's fearful outlook, and life has proved her right. She married into a family with wealth, power, and connections, and Bree now has all a woman could dream of: a loving lawyer husband, 2 talented teenage daughters, a new baby boy, a gorgeous home, and every opportunity in the world. Until the day she awakens and sees an old gray-haired woman dressed all in black peering through the bedroom windows, who vanishes as quickly as she appears. It must be a play of the early morning light or the remnant of a waking dream, Bree tells herself, shaking off the bad feeling that's overcoming her. Later that day, though, she spies the old woman again in the parking lot of her daughter's private school, just minutes before Bree's infant son is asleep in a car only a few feet away, and he vanishes. Happens so quickly. Bree looked away for only a second. There's a note left in his place warning her that she's being watched. She wants her baby back. She must not call the police or deviate in any way from the instructions that will follow. Bree will do whatever it takes to protect her family, but what if the cost tears their world apart? So that's Mother May I. And many of you may remember Jocelyn's last book, Never Have I Ever. Next, from Diana Rostad, we've got a book that I am so excited about, and I'm going to tell you why on so many different levels. It's also coming out on that April 6th big day. It's reminiscent of Christina McMorris's Sold on a Monday and William Kent Kruger's This Tender Land. And those of you who joined us last month, or when Kent came on to speak with us about This Tender Land for our Bookaccino Live Book Club event, you may have met Diane in the audience that night, Diana. Kent was so excited about this book. He's given it a fabulous blurb. And you know from him that's super high praise because it means that it's really connected with the book. So here's what we've got. It's Montana. It's 1925. There's an Irish boy orphaned by Spanish flu, a tiny girl who won't speak, and a volatile young man who lies about his age to escape Hell's Kitchen. They're paraded onto train platforms across the Midwest to work-worn folks. See, people there are going to just take these children who are orphans and give them a place to live, but they're also going to work them. The journey is countless miles racing the sun westward. And before they reach the last rejection stop, because they've been rejected all along the way, the oldest child, Charles, comes up with a daring plan. And alone, these children set off towards the Yellowstone River and the grassy mountains where the wild horses roam. They've taken a huge risk to get off the train because now no one knows who they are, but how are they going to find a place for themselves as well? Fate guides them to a ranch of a family stricken by loss. Nara, the daughter of a successful cattleman, has grown into a brusque spinster who refuses the kids on sight. She's worked hard to gain her father's respect and hopes to run their operation, but if the kids stay, she'll be stuck in the kitchen because the boys could actually usurp her role on the land. So she works the kids without mercy, hoping that they'll run off, but they buck up and they show spirit. Remember, these kids have been on the run and they need this to work. When Charles is jailed for freeing wild horses that were rounded up for slaughter, an abusive mother from New York shows up to take the youngest. Dara does the unthinkable, risking everything she holds dear to change their lives forever. Beautifully written. It's a debut novel, and I am just looking to see so much more coming from Diana. I love the cover of this book too, because it just evokes the mountains and this train going by and these two children, really they're abandoned. They're abandoned. They're off on their own, and what this means for them. So another one to investigate. Put on your to-read list. Next, we've got The Good Sister coming from Sally Hepworth. Longtime readers of the site know that I love Sally's thrillers. I absolutely love. Last year was The Mother-in-Law. Well, she's outdone herself here. I think this is going to be the book that really puts her on everyone's radar. Fern Castle works in her local library. She has dinner with her twin sister Rose 3 nights a week. She avoids crowds, bright lights, and loud noises as much as possible. Fern has carefully constructed her life, and disrupting her routine can be dangerous. See, Fern is off on the spectrum, and she just likes things exactly the way they are. And when things don't go like that, well, there was an incident in the past, and how was Fern involved with that? When Rose discovers that she cannot get pregnant, she sees her chance to pay her sister back for everything. Fern sees her chance to pay her sister back for everything she's done for her. Fern can have a baby for Rose. She just needs to find a father, and that will be simple, right? Fern's mission will shake the foundations of the life she's carefully built for herself and stir up dark secrets from the past in this quirky, rich, and shocking story of unexpected love. So everyone's got a dark side. Who's got the dark side in this book? And it's a story about sisters. It's a story about one sister trying to just have her life be like as peaceful as it possibly can. But then what can she do for her sister, and how can she really help her sister? Because that would mean so much to her. It's really interesting to see the way things unfold, and the end is absolutely killer, literally. Next, we've got When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLean. You all know Paula as the author of The Paris Wife and other great books of historical fiction, where she's flipping to a different genre here. And I love when authors go out and do something different. Last month, we talked about Lisa Scottolini, which with Eternal, she's writing historical fiction, where she's been used to writing thrillers. A good writer is a good writer, and let's see what they can do in a different genre and where they can develop their talent and develop their work. So Paula is getting great buzz about this book because she's done a great job at changing genres and writing a thriller. Anna Hart is a seasoned missing persons detective in San Francisco with far too much knowledge of the darkest side of human nature. When tragedy strikes her personal life, Anna, desperate and numb, flees to the Northern California village of Mendocino to grieve. She lived there as a child with her beloved foster parents, and now she believes it might be the only place left for her. Yet the day she arrives, she learns that a local teenage girl has gone missing. The crime feels frighteningly reminiscent of the most crucial time in Anna's childhood, when the unsolved mystery of a young girl touched Mendocino and changed the community forever. As past and present collide, Anna realizes that she has been led to this moment. The most difficult lessons of her life have given her insight into how victims come into contact with violent predators. As Anna becomes obsessed with saving the missing girl, she must accept that true courage means getting out of her own way and learning to let others in. So this is coming on April 13th. You hear about it in advance. It's interesting. Kristen Hanna gave this a blurb, and it says the powerhouse of a novel that is guaranteed to keep the reader up all night. And it's fun because it's like Paul is switching genres like this. I like authors that go and test their chops. And that's it. Here are some listing of the early bets on selections that I've picked so far. The Mystery of Mrs. Christie, The Push, The Children's Blizzard, What Could Be Saved, and Yellow Wife. And I'm adding to these as the weeks go on. I confess I haven't been doing as much reading ahead as I would like to. I'm staying in the moment more than I typically am. I've read a couple of books that are coming out in April, May, and June, but most of it is centered on what's out this week because there is a lot coming out and feeling a lot of pressure right now to try to help books succeed, given that there's so much distraction going on for everybody. We're trying to give focus to what we can to help the books really work. And interviewing authors takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of developing questions as well. With that in mind, we are working with the Morristown Festival of Books for a virtual author series that is happening on February 20th and 21st. And wherever you are in the country, you can participate in this. I will be interviewing Kristen Hanna and Nadia Owusu on separate events. Kristen Hanna at 2:00 on the 20th, Nadia at 3:30. Then on Sunday, we will have David Michaelias interviewed by Bill Goldstein, who many of you know from the Today Show. He's also a historian who has interviewer who has interviewed everyone who has written books about the Roosevelts. So how perfect for him to be interviewing David about Eleanor. So that discussion will be happening on Sunday, the 21st at 2:00. Bill's also ran the programming for the Roosevelt House for 10 years. So he's got an deep and intimate knowledge of the subject as well. And then we'll be discussing The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, the New York Times runaway bestseller by V.E. Schwab, her first adult novel. So we've got 4 terrific events. That one will be at 3:30 on Sunday, the 21st. So 4 events. I'll be moderating the first 2. We have other people doing the Sunday events. We'll be involved in everything going along the way. So hope you can join us. Our next great event will be our next great reading event, Bookaccino Live for March will be on March 10th at 2:00. March and February are 2 great months in years that aren't leap year because the days completely align the following month. So I didn't have to think hard that say Wednesday, February 10th will be Wednesday, March 10th. I think we should have only 28-day months. It would make my life a lot easier. The sign up for these will be live by Friday. Also, we've got another Bookaccino Live book group event coming up on March 25th at 8 p.m. where Kim Michelle Richardson will be discussing The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. We know so many of you love this book. One of the reasons we're picking a book that's been out for a while is we want to make sure everybody's had a chance to read it so we can talk spoilers and secrets and all those kinds of things. If you would like to be on stage, as we've done in the past, with a couple of guests joining us to ask questions directly to the author, shoot me a note that says Kim Michelle in the subject line and tell me what your question is, and we'll see if it can work on the program. Book Reporter Talks, we've been doing a ton of interviews. I hope you're checking these out. We're thrilled to announce that we have 1,000 subscribers right now on YouTube. Thanks to all of you who have subscribed. If you can subscribe wherever you watch videos, listen to podcasts, the video out on YouTube, wherever you're listening to podcasts, we would really appreciate it. I was featured in a new newsletter called Live Writers the other day, which features a number of podcasts, or they're all podcasts that you can find about books and authors. And I was very pleased to be able to be interviewed by them. And we know that that will help bring us more listeners.